The unexpected champions. High Admiral Kickstall's crystalline appendages trembled slightly as she studied the holographic display before her. The massive chamber of the Galactic Defense Council, normally filled with the quiet hum of diplomatic discourse, had fallen into an uncomfortable silence. The image rotating in the center of the room showed a crude-looking spacecraft, its design an offensive amalgamation of what appeared to be randomly assembled parts. They achieved faster-than-light travel. With this, her voice carried the particular tone of someone who had just witnessed a child build a quantum computer from rocks and sticks. This cannot be accurate. First observer Releth, whose gelatinous form rippled with nervous energy, moved forward. I assure you, Admiral, our data is correct. The humans have indeed achieved FTL capabilities using what they call experimental physics and practical engineering. They apparently decided that if they couldn't solve the theoretical problems, they would simply ignore them. The assembled council members, representing over 300 spacefaring civilizations, shifted uncomfortably. In the 12,000 years since the council's formation, no species had ever achieved FTL travel without first developing a complete understanding of unified field theory. It was simply not done. Explain, Kickstall demanded, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep concern. They built increasingly powerful engines, conducted thousands of trials, and essentially forced their way through space-time through sheer determination. Their scientists have a saying, "The math is wrong, but the ship works anyway." Releth's transmission patterns showed distinct distress. They call it empirical development. The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of protests, ranging from high-frequency electromagnetic bursts to low subsonic rumbles. Admiral Kickstall raised one crystalline appendage, immediately restoring order. "What of their military capabilities?" she asked, dreading the answer. "Limited by our standards," Releth responded, displaying images of human warfare. "They still rely primarily on chemical propellants and kinetic energy weapons." However, the observer paused, his form clouding slightly. "They show remarkable creativity in combat situations." The holographic display shifted to show various human conflicts. Council members watched in growing horror as humans turned seemingly harmless objects into weapons, adapted instantly to battlefield conditions that should have been fatal, and displayed a disturbing enthusiasm for what they called improvised solutions. "They appear to be able to weaponize virtually anything," Releth continued. "During our observation period, we witnessed a human soldier disable an automated defense system using nothing but a container of carbonated beverage and what they call a candy bar." Admiral Kickstall's crystalline structure briefly shifted to a frequency indicating disbelief. "Surely this is an isolated incident." "No, Admiral. This appears to be a species-wide trait. They have entertainment programs dedicated to solving problems with limited resources. They call it McGivering, after some historical figure." The display showed more examples. Humans surviving in environments that should have been lethal, continuing to fight despite injuries that would incapacitate most species, and displaying a disturbing ability to function as a coordinated unit without any apparent hierarchical command structure. "Most concerning," Releth continued, "is their response to threat situations. Unlike most species, humans become more effective in combat as conditions deteriorate. They exhibit something they call stress response, which actually enhances their physical and mental capabilities under duress." The council chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. A species that became more dangerous when threatened, could adapt to any situation, and approached problems in ways that defied conventional logic. "We must make a decision," Admiral Kickstall announced. "The humans have achieved FTL capability. By our own laws, we must either extend them membership in the Council, or—" She left the alternative unspoken. The elimination of potentially dangerous spacefaring species was not discussed in polite company, even if it was sometimes necessary. First observer Releth's form pulsed with urgent patterns. "There is one more thing, Admiral. During our observation, we detected a Shadow Claw raiding party approaching Earth. Before we could intervene, the humans, the observers' transmission patterns became chaotic with distress. They captured the raiders, using modified mining equipment and something called duct tape. The council erupted again. The Shadow Claw were among the most feared pirates in the galaxy, their biomechanical ships nearly impossible to detect, let alone capture. And humans had defeated them with mining equipment. Admiral Kickstall's decision crystallized, quite literally, as her form shifted to its most formal configuration. "We will extend membership to the humans," she declared, "not because they meet our traditional criteria, but because I fear what they might become if left to develop on their own. At least as members of the Council, we can attempt to guide their development." She turned to address the full Council, begin preparations for formal first contact. And, she added, her tone carrying a new harmonic of concern, "update our combat protocols. Something tells me we're going to need them." As the Council members filed out, Admiral Kickstall studied the image of Earth one final time. The blue-green planet seemed peaceful enough, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to change forever. Humanity had achieved the impossible through sheer determination and what they called creative problem-solving. The question now was, what would they do next? In her private chambers later, Kickstall added a personal note to the official record. "May the eternal stars help us all if we ever give humans a reason to consider us enemies. They don't just bend the rules of warfare. They break them, remake them, and then use the pieces to build something we never saw coming." The crucible of survival. Commander Talon Blackwood stood before the gathered alien dignitaries of the Galactic Defense Council's training division, maintaining perfect composure despite the sweltering heat of Rigel Prime's 3 suns. The assembled council members watched through various sensory organs as sweat beaded on his forehead, but didn't drop. A small demonstration of human environmental adaptability that wasn't lost on the observing species. "You want to put humans through standard combat certification?" Training Overseer Vixthyrix asked, her crystalline form vibrating with what might have been amusement. "The same humans who achieved FTL travel by, how did you phrase it, hitting the engine until it worked?" "With respect, Overseer," Blackwood replied, "we prefer the term aggressive experimental engineering. And yes, we believe joint training would benefit both humanity and the Council." The massive training facility sprawled behind them, a labyrinth of environmental chambers, combat simulators, and endurance courses designed to test the limits of every known spacefaring species. No single species had ever qualified for all disciplines. Their biological limitations made it impossible. "Very well," Vixthyrix decided, her crystalline structure shifting to formal configuration. "We shall begin with the environmental adaptation trials. Surely even humans have limits." 6 hours later, the observation chamber was unusually quiet as they watched Blackwood and his team, Lieutenant Rani Patel and Sergeant Marcus O'Connor, emerge from the cryogenic chamber. The monitoring systems indicated they had not only survived but maintained combat readiness in temperatures that would shatter most carbon-based life forms. "Bit chilly in there," O'Connor commented, rubbing his arms. "Reminds me of winter swimming back in Ireland." The alien observers exchanged troubled glances. "Winter? Swimming?" one asked. "Oh yeah," Patel chimed in, checking her equipment. "Humans do it for fun. Helps build cold resistance. When do we start the heat trials?" The heat trials proved equally disturbing to the observers. The human team not only survived but maintained tactical coherence in temperatures that approached the melting point of several council member species. "Fascinating," Chief Medical Observer Zixtal noted, their tentacles writhing in agitation. "They're actively sweating to regulate their temperature. And are they comparing it to something called hot yoga?" "Humans," Blackwood explained between gulps of water, "evolved as persistence hunters on a planet with extreme temperature variations. We had to adapt or die. Usually, we did both until we got it right." The gravity chambers came next. The human team moved through varying gravitational fields with what the observers could only describe as inappropriate enthusiasm. "This is amazing," Patil exclaimed, executing a perfect combat role in 3G. "It's like resistance training but better. We could incorporate this into our standard workout routines." "They exercise for entertainment?" an observer asked incredulously. "Wait until you hear about Parker." O'Connor grinned, using the increased gravity to enhance his striking power against a training dummy. But it was the chemical warfare simulator that truly disturbed the council members. The chamber filled with various non-lethal but highly irritating compounds designed to test environmental suit integrity and response protocols. The humans went in without suits. "Their pain tolerance is extraordinary," Zixtal observed, watching as the team completed complex tactical maneuvers while exposed to substances that should have left them incapacitated. "They appear to be adapting to the irritants in real time." "Reminds me of my grandmother's curry," Patil commented, eyes watering but stance steady as she maintained her position. Now that was chemical warfare. The final test involved psychological stress evaluation. The simulator created scenarios designed to break morale and test mental resilience. The humans responded by turning it into what they called a team-building exercise. Did they just create an impromptu game scoring system for surviving psychological warfare? Thyrix asked, her crystalline form clouding with confusion. 5 points for maintaining sanity, 10 for helping a teammate, and bonus points for creative solutions, Blackwood confirmed, helping O'Connor over a simulated chasm, while Patil provided covering fire against manifested fears. It helps keep morale up. In the end, the council members gathered to review the results, their various physiological indicators showing signs of deep concern. They exceeded parameters in every category, Thyrix announced. Not because they were the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced, but because they simply refused to accept failure as an option. They turned every challenge into an opportunity for adaptation. "That's kind of our thing," Blackwood explained. "Humans have a saying: adapt, improvise, overcome. It's not just a motto. It's how we survived long enough to reach the stars." "And now they're here," Zixtal observed quietly. "A species that treats lethal environments as training opportunities, views psychological warfare as a team sport, and apparently considers extreme physical stress to be entertainment." The council members watched as the human team discussed ways to improve the training courses, their casual conversation about incorporating Parker elements and combat yoga, sending shivers through various alien nervous systems. "Begin preparations for advanced integration," Thyrix ordered, "and update the training parameters. Something tells me we're going to need entirely new categories for human capabilities." As the humans left to clean up and rest, Zixtal added a note to their official report. "Traditional metrics for species capability assessment may need revision. Humans don't just overcome obstacles, they befriend them, study them, and turn them into training tools. Most concerning of all, they seem to genuinely enjoy the process." The council had wanted to understand human combat potential. What they discovered instead was something far more fascinating and terrifying. A species that turned adversity itself into an advantage, one challenge at a time. The primal response. The alarms on Outpost Sigma-7 screamed to life at precisely 300 station time. Security Chief Rintal's electromagnetic sensors pulsed with anxiety as the first explosions rocked the station's outer hull. The Void Collective, a group of cybernetically enhanced raiders, had chosen their moment well. Half the station's regular security force was away on training exercises. What remained was a skeleton crew of alien security personnel and a small contingent of human engineers who had been upgrading the station's power systems. As Rintal activated emergency protocols, Lieutenant Jasmine Patel's voice crackled over the comm system, sounding disturbingly cheerful. "Hey Chief, remember those defensive modifications we suggested last week? The ones you said were technically impossible and probably illegal in 17 systems." Rental's electromagnetic field flickered with concern. "Lieutenant, this is hardly the time. Because we installed them anyway." Patel continued breezily. "Jackson, boot up Protocol Crazy Ivan. Rodriguez, get the maintenance bots ready for their combat debut." "You did what?" Rental demanded, but was interrupted by the sight of the station's maintenance robots, normally used for hull repairs, suddenly activating with what appeared to be makeshift weapon systems attached to their frames. The maintenance bots were just sitting there. Engineer Jackson explained over the comm, the sound of rapid typing in the background. "Seemed a waste not to give them some upgrades. Also, fair warning, we may have slightly modified the station's gravity plating." The first wave of Void Collective raiders breached the outer airlock, their cybernetic implants gleaming under emergency lighting. They expected to find panicked station personnel. Instead, they found chaos. Their kind of chaos. Sections of gravity plating randomly reversed polarity, sending raiders flying into ceilings. Maintenance bots, their usual repair tools replaced with improvised weapons, emerged from ventilation shafts. And through it all, the humans were laughing. "That's 10 points for the gravity trap," Rodriguez called out, operating 3 maintenance bots simultaneously from a makeshift control center. "Bonus multiplier for style." "Are they keeping score?" a junior security officer asked Rental, mandibles twitching in confusion. "Humans appear to turn combat into competitive social bonding exercises," Rental replied, watching as the station's cleaning systems, apparently reprogrammed by the engineers, began spraying raiders with industrial lubricant. "I've stopped trying to understand why." The Void Collective, programmed for conventional warfare, found their combat algorithms struggling to adapt. Their enhanced reflexes meant nothing when the floor suddenly became ceiling. Their superior weaponry proved less effective than expected against opponents who used maintenance bots as mobile cover and improvised EMP devices from power coupling components. "Chief," Patel's voice crackled through the comm again. "Remember how you said the station's waste reclamation system couldn't possibly be weaponized? Good news, you were wrong about that too." Before Rental could respond, entire sections of corridor were sealed off by rapidly expanding industrial foam, a defensive measure that, according to every engineering manual in existence, should not have been possible with standard station equipment. The turning point came when a Void Collective raider managed to wound one of the junior engineers. The human response was immediate and terrifying. The previously jovial atmosphere vanished, replaced by something that made even Rental's highly evolved threat detection systems scream in alarm. "They hurt Thompson." Jackson's voice had lost all its playful tone. "Rodriguez, remember that thing we theorized about using the station's magnetic field generators as makeshift rail guns? Already on it." "Patel, we're going to need more power to the engineering section." "Rerouting from life support," Patel replied grimly. "We've got emergency oxygen supplies. We don't need artificial gravity when we're about to make our own physics." What followed would be studied in Federation military academies for generations to come. The humans, their protective instincts triggered, transformed from creative engineers into something ancient and terrifying. They turned the entire station into a weapon, using systems in ways that violated several laws of physics and probably a few of engineering. The Void Collective, faced with opponents who treated fundamental physical laws as polite suggestions and responded to injuries with focused fury, began to retreat. Their combat algorithms couldn't compute a response to enemies who used maintenance equipment as weapons, while humming something called "Another One Bites the Dust." In the aftermath, as Federation emergency response teams arrived to find the raiders either captured or fled, Rental found the humans already planning improvements to their improvised defenses. "Next time," Jackson mused, treating a plasma burn with what appeared to be casual disinterest, "we should set up a proper point system for different types of takedowns. Maybe add some style categories." "Also," Rodriguez added, helping Thompson with his bandages while simultaneously reprogramming a maintenance bot, "we should definitely install more gravity plates. The look on their faces when we turned on the rotational field was priceless. Rental opened a new section in their official report titled Human Combat Psychology. The first entry read, "Warning to all security forces. Human protective instincts transform them from dangerous to lethal. Their response to threats against group members can only be described as enthusiastically apocalyptic. Most concerning, they treat lethal combat as an opportunity for technical innovation and team building." In the background, Patel was explaining to a horrified Federation engineer how they had converted the station's coffee maker into an improvised plasma containment field generator. "The best part is," she grinned, "it still makes coffee." Rental made one final note. Addendum. Humans don't just adapt to crisis situations. They thrive in them, turning every threat into an opportunity for what they call creative problem solving. Most worryingly, they appear to genuinely enjoy the process. The Federation would need to update its combat protocols. Again, the breaking point. Nova Station hung in the void between stars, its massive form dwarfed by the approaching Void Collective Armada. Grand Admiral Zixthar of the Galactic Defense Fleet watched the tactical display with growing dread. The station, home to over 20,000 beings from across the galaxy, had become the last line of defense against the largest Void Collective assault in recorded history. "Their numbers are unprecedented," First Tactician Kvex observed, their crystalline form clouded with concern. "The station's defenses cannot hold against such force." "Actually," Commander Samira Hassan's voice cut through the tension, "we've been making some modifications." The human officer's calm demeanor seemed wildly inappropriate given the situation. She stood before the tactical display, dark eyes gleaming with what could only be described as anticipation. Modifications. Zixthar's sensory appendages twitched. In the 3 years since humans had joined the Federation, he'd learned to both respect and fear that word coming from their species. "Remember those experimental defense systems we proposed?" Hassan smiled. "The ones you said were theoretically impossible and a violation of several laws of physics." "You didn't. We did. Authorization code. Humanity's last stand." Hassan's fingers flew across the control panel. "Lieutenant Winters, initiate protocol thermobula." The station's outer ring suddenly bristled with what appeared to be mining equipment. Zixthar's tactical systems struggled to classify the hodgepodge of modified industrial tools and repurposed civilian technology that now covered the station's surface. Did they convert the entire industrial sector into weapons? Kvex asked, their voice carrying harmonics of disbelief. "Not just weapons," Hassan explained as the first wave of Void Collective ships entered range. "We call it aggressive industrial repurposing. Lieutenant, show them what humanity does when backed into a corner." What followed would rewrite military doctrine across the galaxy. The station's modified mining lasers, their power amplified by what appeared to be redirected fusion reactor output, carved through Void Collective shields like they didn't exist. Maintenance drones, reprogrammed and equipped with improvised weapons, swarmed enemy ships in coordinated patterns that no eye could predict. "Are they using the station's waste reclamation system as a mass driver?" Kvex asked, watching compressed debris tear through enemy formations. "Waste not, want not," Hassan grinned. "Also, you might want to shield your sensors. We're about to test our new electromagnetic pulse array. We built it from spare communications equipment and about 30,000 toasters." Toasters. Zixthar's translator must have malfunctioned. "You'd be amazed what humans can build with kitchen appliances and determination." Hassan replied as sections of the Void Collective fleet suddenly went dark, their cybernetic systems overwhelmed by the improvised EMP weapon. But the Void Collective hadn't become the galaxy's most feared raiders by being easily defeated. They adapted, pushing forward with overwhelming numbers. As their forces breached the outer defenses, the humans revealed their final modification. "Initiating Protocol Ragnarok," Hassan announced, her voice carrying that particular tone that made even hardened warriors nervous. We're routing all power to the gravity manipulation system, the gravity system. Kuvex's crystalline form vibrated with confusion. How could that possibly? They never finished the question. The space around Nova Station suddenly warped as hundreds of gravity generators, modified far beyond their original specifications, created a maze of gravitational anomalies. Void Collective ships found themselves trapped in artificial gravity wells or torn apart by conflicting gravitational forces. Impossible, Zixthar whispered. The power requirements alone. We may have slightly modified the station's fusion reactors, Hassan admitted. Turns out they're much more efficient when you ignore several fundamental safety protocols. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Void Collective, for all their technological superiority, couldn't adapt to opponents who treated the laws of physics as polite suggestions and responded to overwhelming odds with enthusiastic innovation. In the aftermath, as Federation cleanup crews tried to make sense of the modified systems that had saved Nova Station, Zixthar found Hassan in the command center, already working on new improvements. You turned a space station into a weapon, he stated, his tone carrying harmonics of both awe and horror. No, Hassan corrected, looking up from her work. We turned it into a fortress. The weapons were just a bonus. Besides, most of these modifications can be reversed. Probably. Your species, Zixthar observed, treats impossible situations as personal challenges. That's humanity for you, Hassan smiled. Give us a problem we can't solve, and we'll rewrite the rules until we can. Speaking of which, want to see our plans for improving the station's defensive capabilities? We got some ideas involving the hydroponics bay and about 1,000 coffee makers. Zixthar looked at the tactical displays showing the scattered remnants of the Void Collective fleet, then at the human officer casually proposing even more impossible modifications. He made a final note in his report. The true power of humanity lies not in their technology or their numbers, but in their absolute refusal to accept defeat. When faced with impossible odds, they don't just fight. They innovate, improvise, and redefine the very nature of what's possible. Most worryingly, they seem to genuinely enjoy doing so. In the background, Hassan was explaining to a horrified engineering team how they had converted the station's entertainment systems into a targeting computer. The best part is, she grinned, it can still play games during downtime. Anyone up for some Space Invaders? The ultimate warriors. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Defense Council hummed with an energy that hadn't been felt in millennia. High Admiral Kickstall, her crystalline form glowing with formal patterns, stood before the assembled representatives of 300 spacefaring civilizations. The holographic display behind her showed scenes from what historians would later call the Nova Station miracle. We have spent centuries, she began, trying to understand why humans are different. Today, I believe we finally have our answer. The display shifted to show various human achievements, the impossible defense of Nova Station, the creative modifications that had saved countless lives, and the increasingly innovative ways humans had revolutionized warfare across the galaxy. It's not their technology, Kickstall continued. By our standards, their tech is practically primitive. It's not their physical capabilities. Many species are stronger, faster, more durable. No, what makes humans the galaxy's ultimate warriors is something far more fundamental. They simply don't understand the concept of impossible. Commander Samira Hassan stepped forward, now wearing the newly created insignia of the Joint Species Combat Innovation Division. With respect, Admiral, she interjected, we understand impossible just fine. We just don't accept it. The display showed new footage, humans turning maintenance equipment into weapons, converting civilian technology into defense systems, and repeatedly achieving what every other species considered impossible through what they called aggressive problem-solving. Consider their response to the Void Collective threat, Kickstall continued. When faced with overwhelming odds, most species would retreat, regroup, plan. Humans, they turned a space station into a fortress using spare parts and determination. They converted kitchen appliances into weapons. They rewrote our understanding of what's possible, not through superior technology or resources, but through sheer creative audacity. The council chamber filled with murmurs as representatives discussed the implications. The Void Collective, once considered the galaxy's greatest threat, had been effectively neutralized not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by humans who refused to accept defeat as an option. But perhaps most importantly, Kickstall's voice carried across the chamber. Humans don't just survive crisis situations, they thrive in them. They turn adversity into opportunity, threats into challenges, and impossible situations into what they call interesting problems to solve. The display showed scenes from various human training facilities where they deliberately created challenging scenarios to, as they put it, keep things interesting. Other species watched in mixed horror and fascination as humans treated lethal combat scenarios as learning opportunities and turned survival situations into competitive events. This is why, Kickstall announced, we are establishing the Joint Species Combat Innovation Academy. Under human guidance, we will learn not just new ways of fighting, but new ways of thinking about what's possible. Hassan stepped forward again, her expression serious. The galaxy is changing, she addressed the council. The old ways of warfare, superior technology, overwhelming force, predictable strategies, they're not enough anymore. The future belongs to those who can adapt, improvise, and overcome. That's what humanity brings to the galaxy, not just the ability to fight, but the ability to change the rules of the game itself. The display showed the latest graduation ceremony from the Academy, where species from across the galaxy learned what humans called creative combat solutions and aggressive engineering optimization. We've learned something crucial about humans, Kickstall concluded. They don't just break rules, they rewrite them. They don't just face challenges, they embrace them. And perhaps most importantly, they do it all with an enthusiasm that most species reserve for survival situations. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't become the galaxy's ultimate warriors through superior strength or advanced technology. They'd done it by refusing to accept limitations, by turning every disadvantage into an advantage, and by approaching impossible situations with what they called creative optimism. The Void Collective failed, Hassan added, not because we were stronger or more advanced, but because they couldn't adapt to opponents who treated their technological superiority as an interesting puzzle to solve. They expected us to fight according to established rules. Instead, we changed the game entirely. As the council session concluded, Kickstall made one final entry in the official record. The true power of humanity lies not in what they can do, but in what they believe they can do. They don't just push boundaries, they ignore them entirely. They don't just think outside the box, they question why there needs to be a box at all. And perhaps most remarkably, they do it all while treating the impossible as merely a challenge they haven't solved yet. In the background, Hassan was already discussing plans for improving the Academy's training programs. We're thinking of adding a course on weaponizing everyday objects, she explained to a horrified council member. You'd be amazed what you can do with a coffee maker and some creativity. The galaxy had wanted to understand why humans were different. What they discovered was something far more profound. A species that turned the very concept of limitations into opportunities, that treated the impossible as merely a temporary inconvenience, and that faced the universe's greatest challenges with what they called determined optimism. They were, indeed, the ultimate warriors, not because they were the strongest or most advanced, but because they simply refused to accept any other outcome.